I know a secret. Very few people understand the true nature of the galaxy, that it is a prison, and all its inhabitants are prisoners. And the reason for that, the reason is one word. It is the name of our fear. It is the name of our chains. That word is Sith. Today on the Comic Book Report, Star Wars, Crimson Reign. Stick around and check it out. Greetings from a galaxy far, far away. My name is Dominic, and you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm taking a look at the long-awaited follow-up to Star Wars War of the Bounty Hunters. That is, of course, this collection here, Star Wars Crimson Reign. This was a long-awaited collection for me, and I cannot wait to review it for all of you today. So go ahead and settle in, and let's get started. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by Charles Soule and penciled by Stephen Cummings. The issues were first published by Marvel Comics beginning in 2021. The volume itself collects Star Wars Crimson Reign issues 1 through 5. This standard size trade paperback comes in at 136 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a brief spoiler warning. I will be flipping through today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our look at the trade paperback collection. This is Star Wars Crimson Reign. The trade paperback, as I mentioned, is standard size, and it includes glossy print paper stock paper. As far as the build quality, this is just your normal run-of-the-mill Marvel trade paperback collection. It's pretty well made, no complaints, but also nothing that makes it a gigantic standout. Just your run-of-the-mill trade paperback. I know when I first heard about War of the Bounty Hunters, I absolutely could not wait. At the time, the only thing by Charles Soule I'd ever read was a Daredevil run, which I quite enjoyed. I don't think I've reviewed it for my channel yet. I might have mentioned it in the Where to Start Daredevil video I did some time ago. At any rate, I was excited enough when I heard the concept of War of the Bounty Hunters, and I went ahead and picked up the trade paperback and reviewed it, I believe sometime last year. Just giving you a quick look at the collection I'm referencing here. I'll also link the video so you can go ahead and check out my review from a few months ago. But for today, we're going to go ahead and dive into Star Wars Crimson Reign itself, which is part 2 of a planned trilogy that Charles Soule is doing, following Kira and the kind of Crimson Dawn resurrection here. And right from the jump, I want to mention I went into this trade paperback extremely excited to pick up the story where War of the Bounty Hunters led off. That was one of the first Star Wars comics I'd ever read, and it was an absolute blast. I loved following Boba Fett and the whole escapade that followed Han Solo's carbonated body and all the bounty hunters fighting, and the reintroduction of Kira, whose character I really enjoyed in Solo. It just left a great taste in my mouth. I think I reviewed it pretty favorably on my channel, and so this was something I was just waiting for the collected edition to drop for Crimson Reign. But I have to say, I was a tad disappointed. I think right from the jump, there just weren't as many memorable and familiar Star Wars characters that we followed in the course of this trade paperback. In fact, I think one of the most interesting was Kira herself. But ultimately, we didn't even follow her story the entire time. In the first issue, it kind of sets up the status quo of her main players or kind of generals in her structuring of the Crimson Dawn organization. And then we find that each issue in this collection follows a different faction or lead set of characters within Crimson Dawn, who are all orchestrating her broader vision or mission for Crimson Dawn, which we find out in the early pages is to topple the Sith and effectively end the rule of the Emperor Palpatine. But this is no mean task, and so she has this grand plan that she's kind of enacting, and we follow characters like the Knights of Ren, and another character known as the Archivist, who's also one of the narrators across this collection, and a few other of these people in her Crimson Dawn organization that are all incrementally setting up the pieces for her master plan. Because of that, this collection feels very episodic, where each issue follows one of these factions on their own specific mission. Ultimately, these do all expertly connect back to the overall vision and kind of push the ball forward for her play. And so I get that. I think it's well structured, all things considered. But the kind of episodic nature for it to me, it just left me wanting a little bit. I do wonder if I almost would have gotten more out of it if we just followed Kira through some of these adventures. That being said, there were still some issues in this collection that were exceedingly strong, but some were more interesting than others. I mentioned the archivist. Her issue was one of my favorites as she's trying to track down Yoda, which ultimately leads her to the Dagobah system. Also, another standout was the issues following the Knights of Ren, who essentially are trying to rob Darth Vader on his lava castle hideout. And that one reads kind of like a weird, exciting action heist issue. At any rate, a lot of these issues kind of had their own flavor, and again, some were truly standouts. But overall, it just didn't reach the heights of War of the Bounty Hunters for me. Now, I should say, I'm not an avid Star Wars comic book reader. To this day, I've really only read War of the Bounty Hunters, this Crimson Reign collection, a little bit of Soule's Darth Vader run, as well as some of Jason Aaron's Star Wars title. Again, all of these runs and issues I've read for Star Wars in this modern era so far, I've really enjoyed, but I'm not reading a lot of the interstitial issues or the tie-ins or anything else that's overall happening in the world of these comics right now. So perhaps people reading those, and maybe you're in the comments, if so, sound off. Maybe this collection is even more powerful and better when you read all the tie-ins or when you read it in context of what's happening in this world right now. But someone who's just trying to pick up these event books and read the overall trilogy narrative, this collection left me a little bit wanting, and it has me a tad nervous for how they're going to round out this trilogy. But I don't want to judge this all prematurely. This could have an amazing conclusion to this trilogy. In fact, this volume ultimately ends on a pretty high note, and it really sets up the expectation for this next chapter in the trilogy for me. I think that there's enough here that I will continue reading on whenever that third collection does come out, but I'm not as eager for it as I was going from War of the Bounty Hunters into this book. I think that the first chapter was definitely stronger than this middle chapter. But again, to be fair, with these kind of narratives, I feel like the middle entry is the hardest to execute successfully. Although, this is the franchise that gave us Empire Strikes Back, so maybe the bar was raised higher for me going into this second chapter. But for me, there was still a lot to like about Crimson Dawn. The art overall was really consistent in quality, if not a little bit too cartoony or animated for my taste. The detailing was still expertly done, we had a great color palette, and overall, like I said, very consistent art styles. The way they drew some of the characters, like the Archivist, that whole issue on Dagobah I thought was stunning. Overall, just really happy with the presentation and the layouts. Everything about the art direction was pretty solid for me in this book. And like I said, the overall narrative was still strong. I think that they made some creative choices in how they broke out each issue to have these kind of episodic adventures. I think it works. It certainly added a level of fun to this volume. But issue to issue, it didn't feel extremely cohesive, and I wonder if we'd lost a bit of momentum. I feel like my general thought when I finished an issue in this book was, okay, I wonder what the next adventure will be in the following issue, rather than, oh my gosh, that was a great cliffhanger, I can't wait to read the next chapter, if that makes sense. But to me, it's just two different kinds of storytelling. Do you like episodic adventures, or do you like big, almost seamless story arcs that just go right into the next one, right into the next one, right into the next one, telling one big story? Or do you like your little episodes? I think depending on what kind of reader you are and how you like to consume storytelling, it might really play a role in how you enjoy this collection. I know that there is like a Silver Age of Comics quality to me with that episodic storytelling where you could have just read each individual issue and been kind of satisfied for your monthly adventure. I imagine if I read this month to month on the stacks, I wouldn't have been super disappointed because every month I would have gotten the next issue of Crimson Reign and had my own little adventure, beginning, middle, and end. But reading it in a collected edition, like I said, you get a lot of variety, but you almost have a loss of momentum, at least in my opinion. This was definitely not a bad read, and I'm eager to read the next chapter. But as a standalone, I'd be lying if I said I didn't find it a bit lacking. At any rate, let's give it a grade. For this next chapter in the return of the Crimson Dawn, the Comic Book Report is going to give Star Wars Crimson Reign, the trade paperback, a C+. At the end of the day, this is just barely an above average collection for me. Hot off the heels of War of the Bounty Hunter, I just was hoping for a bit more. We did get a bit more character development in the character of Kira, but we didn't dive deep. Instead, we were introduced to a cast of other side characters within Crimson Dawn. And while these episodic adventures were fun, this wasn't a must-read. But what did you think? Let me know in the comments below, and until next time, thank you for watching the Comic Book Report. Don't forget to like and check out some of my other videos. And until next time, have a good one.